a massive welcome and hello, and welcome to this evening's session, which is titled An Introduction to Social Media, an Introduction to Online Networking. So I am purely a technical host tonight. I just said that I would introduce very briefly Andy Field, who is our UK Head of Marketing. So hopefully a number of you will have met Andy on one-to-ones already. He is a little bit nervous tonight. Gareth and I wrongly told him there wouldn't be that many people on the call, which turned out to be perhaps a bit of an understatement. So he's a bit nervous. So if you could just go to chat to say, hi, Andy. You can say, Andy, you're amazing. Andy, you're fantastic. Andy's handsome. Leicester City Football Club is great. Any of those will go down. Absolute treat. He'd be very pleased. So look, joking aside, thanks for coming. I'm going to be tech support. So I am the Debbie McGee to Andy's Paul Daniels. So obviously we've got chat function because there are quite a lot of you. If you could just put any questions in the chat function, I'll try and compare them at the end to make sure they all get all answered. That would be really helpful. So over to you, Andy. We can see your slides. So over to you, my love.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I mean, my first question was going to be, can you see my slides? So you've answered that one, which is fantastic. A huge thank you to you all for giving up some of your Monday evening. Can you hear that, everybody? Yep. Yeah. So thanks for giving up your Monday evening to listen to me talk about social media, and thanks also to Catherine and Gareth for giving up their prime time slot on this occasion. It's going to happen in two sets really. Tonight's going to be very much a general introduction to online networking using social media, and then the next session in a couple of weeks' time is going to go into some of the more intricate parts of how we actually use social media to our best advantage. So the next slide I've got is the obligatory disclaimer. I'm just going to read through it very quickly and say the information we provided in this presentation doesn't constitute investment advice, financial advice, trading advice, or any other sort of advice. And nothing in this presentation should be treated as such. DAXI doesn't recommend that any cryptocurrency should be bought, sold, or held by you. And nothing in this presentation should be taken as an offer to buy, sell, or hold a cryptocurrency. And you must make sure you do your own due diligence and consult financial advisors before making an investment decision. But I'm sure you all know that anyway. So here's a loose agenda. I say loose agenda. I'll be going through everything in this agenda, but I won't go through everything in this exact order. What I want to do really is cover off each of the social media platforms that we're going to discuss and just give you an overview of what they are. I want to talk about who uses them and what they've achieved and what they can achieve, and also how we can best use those to achieve our goals. And hopefully I'll give you some ideas for a couple of tools that you can use to make things easier along the way, and hopefully some other hints and tips as well. And like Catherine says, if there are any questions, if you just use the chat side of things, I'll be more than happy to answer a few towards the end of the session. So I just thought I'd introduce myself, a little bit about me. You can find me on LinkedIn, as shown here. Please feel free to add me. I was asked by Catherine earlier just to make it very clear that this is not a fraudulent speaker. It is the real me. Just lockdown hasn't been particularly kind to me or my haircut. That photo was taken a little while ago and therefore bears no resemblance to the actual me. So apologies for that, but it is me. And if you feel free to add me on LinkedIn, if you are on LinkedIn. I recently joined DAXI as head of marketing for the UK. I've been here, it's 4 weeks today. I was just telling Catherine actually, and it's been, I could say, a very, very steep learning curve, but I've thoroughly enjoyed my time so far. I've met some of you before, and no doubt those of you I haven't met face to face or Zoom to Zoom, if you like, and we will do in the next few weeks or so. I've been involved in marketing for well over 20 years now. And in that time, my niche has always been in helping grow financial services businesses and working with financial services business, including those that are regulated and those that aren't. And that's always been my key area. And these range from everything to debt management, to insurance, to now obviously crypto wealth. So that's a little bit about me. I was hoping now to introduce Syra, but I'm not sure she's really actually on the call yet.
She's 2 minutes away. She's just got caught on a previous call. So if you wouldn't mind skipping ahead, we will definitely get to talk to her. But if that's okay, can we just put her on a little bit later?
Yeah, of course.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll do that. If you could let me know, Catherine, when she arrives, and then we can just skip back to that slide. That's no problem.
Of course. Lovely. Are you looking at your WhatsApp? Or are you looking at the chat on here? What's better for you? Or do you want to just interrupt me?
Yeah, so that's okay. For me, I can look at WhatsApp. I can do whatever. If I look at your WhatsApp on yours, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Sure. No worries.
So what I was going to do with Sarah, and I will do in a moment, is Sarah's uses social media a lot. And I just thought before we actually got on to talking about the various types of social media, it'd be really nice to hear from somebody who's actually used it a lot and shows that I'm not talking absolute nonsense, in that it's a really good platform to get into to help grow your businesses. So, but I can start off now by just talking about what social media is and how does it relate to marketing. And put simply, social media is just simply a way of reaching out to people. To tell them your message and to increase your reach. And in marketing speak, what we'd say there is we'd say that it's increasing the top funnel level of traffic, which basically means all the messages that you're putting out to people about your ideas, your thoughts, and the information that you want to share, you can put out to absolutely loads and loads of people. Now, the amount of people that will resonate with and will fall down along the funnel to actually become a partner will reduce, hence the reason we call it a funnel. And that's the reason social media is so powerful, because it increases that very top level. And for many people who use social marketing, it can also increase brand awareness. It's one of the reasons Daxi uses it themselves. Essentially, that means that it will allow people to understand what you do and why and how you do it. And the more information people have from a trusted source, in this case, yourself, the more you'll find that your conversion rates increase, which essentially means that more people that you talk to will become customers. So it's all about sharing and sharing useful information in a really, really attractive way. So for being proactive, social media is a really interesting tool. But if you've got a website as well, or use other online tools such as blogs and things like that, how you actually post your content on social media can have a really positive impact on how your website and other content can be found by search engines. So it's got advantages in terms of search engine optimization, or SEO. As well. It's also incredibly cost effective to use social media. I mean, really, it just costs you some time and you need to be able to have some creativity, which is fine. Signing up to accounts, all the accounts that I'm going to be talking about at the moment, is free at the minute. You do hear rumblings actually on social media most of the time, ironically, that there will be charges incurred, but at the minute they're all free to use and to sign up to. And yes, you can advertise using social media platforms. But actually, relatively speaking, it can be really, really successful in terms of advertising because it's very good at targeting. And it also can be a lot cheaper than other methods of advertising as well. So what are the different types of social media? So the ones that I'm going to talk about today are on the screen now. These are probably the most popular and the most relevant platforms for us. And Daxi has accounts for all of these platforms. Now, if you can't tell what these are from the logos, then you probably haven't used much social media before, but that is totally fine. This session is all about an introduction to social media rather than the intricacies, like I said, of using the different platforms. So I think most of you are going to know what these platforms are. And there are hundreds more as well. There's things like Reddit, Stumbled Upon. You could probably go on all night mentioning them, but they all have a common theme in that they're designed for the sharing of information, which is kind of what you want to do with your knowledge and the opportunity that Daxi presents. So I thought I'd start off by talking about the one you probably know the most about, and I'm guessing most of you will actually have an account here, and that's Facebook. Now, Facebook has an average of 2.27 billion monthly active users. And of these users, 2/3 of them use Facebook daily. And for the mathematicians among us, that means there's basically more than 1.5 billion people using Facebook daily. And that means lots of reoccurring use. It's kind of like an addiction with Facebook. So if you're using it, it's because you're getting information from people that you like, that you trust, and you've chosen to connect with, if you like. So you've got a commonality there. So people are addicted, quite literally, to using Facebook. Now, nearly 90% of all the users of Facebook are on mobile devices, which obviously tells us that there's an app, and it obviously tells us that that app is really, really popular. So if we look a bit more closely at the demographic of Facebook users, we can see that 62% of 65-plus-year-olds who are actually online have a Facebook account. And we can also see that 35% of the audience on Facebook is below the age of 25. So what that tells us is that actually all ages use Facebook, the young, the old, and the in-between. It's just a really well-used and heavily used platform. I'd also point out here that very, very slightly, females outweigh male users. It's 53% to 47%, so it's very, very close. But actually, if you've got a Facebook account and a network, what does your network look like? Well, for those of you who are on Facebook, if you've got a personal account, it'll probably mainly consist of friends, family, and if you're anything like me, a load of people who you used to know but now haven't seen or heard of in years. But I use it for, to be honest with you, I use it personally for almost snooping on those people and actually just making sure that I don't lose touch. But somewhere in your Facebook network, you're going to have your target audience. There's going to be a target market in there for sharing the knowledge and the experience that you have in working with DAXI. So what can we do with Facebook? Well, Facebook allows you to share all kinds of content, and that includes video content. And the reason I mention that is because a little tip here, and it's pretty obvious, video provides the greatest amount of engagement for any content at all. So that includes any blogs, any graphics, anything like that. If you've got video and it's good, compelling video, it's going to be the most successful in terms of engagement. And you can share your own content, which is great, but you can also share others. And actually, another great tip here is that you can get some really, really good ideas about great content by just looking at others, even if it's other people who are doing the same thing as you. Just have a look around and see what you can find, because there's some really interesting stuff out there. Now, some of the most liked pages on Facebook are big brands. And in financial services, an example that I just wanted to show you is HSBC. They've got nearly 3 million people following them. Now, most of those are going to be customers, and that means it's a fantastic channel for them to use to communicate with those customers. But big corporations like HSBC, they use Facebook to build brand awareness and communicate their values. So they might be sharing content which isn't just about selling and talking about the services that they would traditionally offer. So they might share content which demonstrates their corporate social responsibility policy, for example, or they might make community posts, that kind of thing. And I just saw this post which sort of resonated with me a little bit in trying to sort of illustrate my point here. Content doesn't always need to be about selling. And this is the example that I just spoke about there of HSBC, giving their community something that's going to be of interest simply because it's relevant and topical. Doesn't really have a lot to do with the fact that they're a bank, but it's something to give added value to following Facebook, to following HSBC on Facebook. And it's another reason for that person to stop and have a look at what's on the stream of information that HSBC are posting. And it's completely in addition to the normal services that are provided by the bank. It's actually talking about the fact that HSBC is showing empathy with a lot of people at the moment who are homeschooling their children during these troubled times. So that's exactly the kind of thing I mean when I say that your content doesn't necessarily have to be sell all the time. As long as it's engaging, it can really help with your personal brand. So I'm just going to finish off this little section on Facebook now before I go back over, because I think Sarah's actually joined us now, so she'll be able to say a few words in a moment, if that's okay. So I'll just finish off with this slide on Facebook first. So for what you're doing with DAXI, you could create a Facebook page for a business. You can have business pages, you can have Facebook pages. And I know some people do operate in that way, but also you can keep it as personal, which I think for DAXI can be just as powerful. So if for a moment we just focus on having the personal account, you could always use this just to talk about the benefits of the DAXI that you've had personally. I mean, I suppose after all, wealth building is completely personal. It's for many people a personal goal. And the content and experiences which are relevant here can be applied to both business and personal lives, and they're not mutually exclusive. Now, in terms of actual content, by all means, utilize the DAXI account as well as other industry posts and creating your own. We put lots and lots of content out there, and often it's shared, often it's original as well. And by all means, use that and share that to your own profile. But what I would say on that is if you are sharing content, then Facebook algorithms, they can filter out some of the things which are just shared and shared alone with no comment. So it's always better when you're sharing things from other people, just to add a little comment in there or an opinion to any shared post, because then you can absolutely maximize the impact that that's going to have, so that you can be pretty sure that Facebook isn't going to stop that appearing on other people's timelines. When you do post your own content, Make it absolutely relevant, original, and personal. That's the key point from my perspective, because people are going to relate to things that you actually say, which explain how and why that what you're saying is relevant to you. They've chosen to engage with you as a person, and that's what they want to hear. There's no harm in posting for promotion, but it shouldn't always be that way. So the things that I've talked about and the things that we just saw on the HSBC account, that kind of thing is equally valuable. You know, these are positive posts, and they're not necessarily pushing DAXI, for example, but they're raising awareness and they're educating. And we always talk about competence building confidence. So that's the importance of education here. What does DAXI stand for? Well, it's building wealth and prosperity. And we want you and you want your people to know that. So just before I do go to Sarah, I'm just actually going to show you one of her posts. She probably doesn't know that I'm doing this, but I hope it's not too much of a surprise, Sarah, but it's a really nice one that I wanted to share with you. And it's something that Sarah created, and just a little graphic that's a very, very simple graphic, but a picture speaks a thousand words, really. Now, this was posted onto Sarah's personal account recently. She got some really great engagement from it. And it's simple, really. There's a simple and attractive image. She accompanied it by putting a little story behind it, which you can't actually see on that screen. It's a bit further up. But it just explains a little bit as to what the picture is if people don't get it from the image itself. But actually, you can see on there, it resulted in over 20 pieces of engagement, 26 comments, and 2 people that shared it. So to be honest with you, it was absolutely perfect. I'm just going to go back to Sarah now, if that's okay, and introduce you for those who don't know her. So yes, what I was going to say was that Sarah, you're probably, most of you will know Sarah well. And Sarah and myself have spoken a few times recently. And one of the things that I know about her is that she's focused her business growth quite heavily on using the power of social media. And what I was wondering, Sarah, is if you don't mind, if you could just, in a second, just explain a little bit about why you've done that and some of the results that you've had as well. And there's no need to go to any great detail about how you've done it, because we'll leave that for the next session. We want to have something to talk about then, so that'll be great. But before I sort of go through all the rest of the various different social networks and tools, I thought it'd be really nice to prove to you that using social can actually work. So is that okay with you, Sarah? Could you just say a few words?
Yes, I'd just like to first of all say that I'm really, really sorry, because I'm aware that I'm extremely late for this meeting. So apologies.
No problem.
If I've kept you behind. Yeah, so I'm not a sort of salesy sort of person. I got on a lot better, I think, with working with real people and speaking to people online. I have used Facebook and Instagram and also LinkedIn for basically attraction marketing, which is when I'm putting some images or some content out there, sharing some news articles. And I get a lot of people engaging with me on that as well, as opposed to me then reaching out to people and telling them how great we are. I prefer to sort of put out the content and then to sort of see what I get back in. I just think that the other way about, for me, I have tried with my other business as well, and I find that you can sort of alienate people a little bit and sort of push them away if you go a little bit too heavy. So I prefer a sort of softer approach. But yeah, basically what I've been doing for the past year and a half since I got involved with that is just really sharing as much content and news, pictures, etc. as I can, and just generally talking about it and trying to position myself as a little bit, I'd hate to say expert in front of all you guys, but in the world that I know, an expert, so that people then come to me if they do need anything or they want to find out more, basically. Is there anything else you want me to say here, Andy?
No, that's absolutely fine. Really, I'm just keen. I was so keen to hear from you because I've seen what you do on social, and you're obviously using it to pretty much its full potential, and it's perfect for the target market that you're choosing to target. And it's just nice to hear. It kind of gives me a bit of a testimonial before I've even talked about it, really, and that people are who don't necessarily use social media, it is really somewhat of an untapped resource for them. So that's perfect. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
So I will move now on to, I just wanted to say one more thing about Facebook, actually, and at this stage. And that is that you can actually tell people really easily that you're a partner of DAXI, which if you did nothing else would probably cause intrigue. And you can do this with, we've got the ability to be able to make DAXI Facebook frames. And these are just a little bit that gets added to your Facebook profile picture that very clearly says that you're a DAXI partner. And you can find out exactly how to do this. We've got a little guide in the resources section of the partner portal. So I just wanted to mention that at this stage. Oh, and actually, while we're talking about it, we have got, you probably noticed the background here, and I suppose really my cover's blown now because I'm not in the new Daxi office in Melton Mowbray Towers, as I call it. I'm at home. But obviously, we've got some Zoom backgrounds, which we've just published now. And as a Daxi management team, we've got access to a suite of these, but you as partners can also access a set of simple, clean backgrounds that are just like the white and blue ones on the screen above. So it just helps when you're giving your own webinars or just having a one-to-one with someone. It just makes things seem a little bit more serious and that you're serious about talking to them, which is really important. So if you do want access to those, please let Gareth know, and he'll be able to tell you exactly where to find them. So now moving on to Instagram. I hope that gave you a bit of a flavour for the power of Facebook in what is a relatively short amount of time that I've got. And like I say, I will go into more detail in the next session. But Instagram is a little bit different. And this basically sees us promoting through the power of imagery and video again. Slightly different demographic of user. The average amount of monthly users is actually 1 billion. And this I found a really staggering statistic that 32%, so basically a third of all internet users have got an Instagram account. The majority of Instagram users are female, and we tend to see a younger audience in general. And it was actually developed for and works best actually on mobile. And the reason for that is that the content that you use for this is photos and video and pictures, basically. And it's incredibly simple. So if you're on mobile, you literally take an image or take a photo, you construct an image, you post it and you tag it. And I'll speak more about what actually tagging is in a moment. Now it's open to all industries, but you'll tend to find it's used more for sort of foodie, e-commerce, more physical things. But that's not to say don't use it. In fact, people use it. In fact, Sarah uses it really successfully. But it may just be that your demographic responds better to Instagram than any other platform, and it's skewed that way. But yeah, it's a really interesting platform. It's got a really interesting feature called Stories, which I'll talk more about in the next session. But I just wanted to give you some of the basics with Instagram, if that's okay. So it uses hashtags, and I'm sure you're all aware of what a hashtag is, but essentially they're also search terms. So hashtags are what people are looking for, either because they know your unique hashtag that you set up yourself and they're searching for it to find out what you're posting or others are posting about you, or they're potentially searching for a subject a bit more generically. So you can find more generic hashtags, of which will bring out a massive amount of results, of which you will be contributing to if you're using that hashtag. And you can use it to add to your images and your videos. And the advice here really is use loads of relevant hashtags, see what others are tagging and ride that wave. And actually, you can easily see this when you're using Instagram. You can see when you're choosing your tags, because I think Instagram even suggests hashtags for you and related ones as well, and also tells you how often they're being used by other people. And I recommend when you're posting a picture or a video that you add 2 or 3 tags or hashtags per video or picture. There is a limit of 30, but that's going to make your post look a little bit weird. You do see people who do probably go to that full limit, and sometimes there's more tags than there is the actual message involved. So, but entirely up to you. You can use up to 30 of them. The next tip I'd say with Instagram is have a really compelling biography. So the accounts page, which tells people about you with a really nice profile picture. So you've actually only got 150 characters to tell people who you are and what you do, and that's quite a difficult task, to really nail that and succinctly tell people about you and why they should be dealing with you and following you. So you can do that. That's going to make a huge difference because it will immediately tell people that you're someone to follow. But also, if you follow relevant accounts from the crypto and wealth and the wealth building space, you're going to find that often they'll follow you back, which is another really, really good way of increasing the amount of people that are following you. In terms of your content, try to keep things interesting. Try to mix up photos and video. I know it sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do that. They just repeat the same messages, etc. And actually, as you go along, there's no harm in aiming to get some shout outs from influencers and people who have a lot of following And because they will act actually as endorsements to what you're saying. If you could manage to get a mention by these people, then that's a really, really powerful, thing to do. Keep your account updated. And you can do this. I mentioned Instagram stories earlier, and this, essentially Instagram stories, to cut a long story short, is, if you pardon the pun, is a feature that adds pictures that you can post temporarily. They last for 24 hours, but actually you can save them as highlights on your account. So they're almost like pinned posts. So when you add stories and you feel they're really, really important, if you can keep them as a highlight, they're then easily seen by all of your followers and anyone who visits your profile page. So again, that was a bit of a sweeping overview of Instagram. And like I said, we'll go into the how to actually use Instagram in the next session a little bit more. But I thought the next one we should cover is, well, social networking for business is what I've titled it, is LinkedIn. And it is typically thought of as the business to business platform. But actually, when you consider what that actually means, it's probably not true. Because you shouldn't really discount business to consumer or consumer to consumer, because actually all we're doing here is we're talking to people who just happen to have a job or a career, and they've decided to join a professional network. Now, LinkedIn itself is great for content. I'm sure most of you will have a LinkedIn account, or at the very least be aware of what LinkedIn is. But there's loads of information on there that can be used for educational purposes and for sharing good practice. And that can be in the form of blogs, articles, industry news, and lots of people also use it for recruiting and actually searching for positions as well, for jobs. And what I would say is that people are mixing business and pleasure more and more, especially in these times. So it's a really interesting platform, actually. It's amazing. I've noticed certainly in the last sort of 6 to 12 months that there has been more sort of, there's always a slant on the content that appears in LinkedIn, but it does seem to be a lot more personable. And I think that really fits in with the messages that we're trying to share around DAXI. So it's really one to be aware of. I just thought I'd point out a few facts, some of which you may not be aware of. So as I've already mentioned, LinkedIn mainly used for business, but it's not just B2B as we've mentioned. But there are over 260 million monthly active users on LinkedIn. Again, that's a staggering amount, I think. And there's a slant towards men, with 57% of the user base being male. 38% of users are millennials, but that means obviously 62% aren't millennials. So it covers a wide range of ages and a really good mix from all different industries. And LinkedIn themselves say that typically, I mean, they would say this, of course, but you could understand why, it's typically 277% more effective at generating leads than any other platform, if used in the right way. So some basic tips for LinkedIn. Some of these things I admit I'm repeating, but it's absolutely relevant and true to say that these things do apply across all of the different networks. So the first one is to make sure you've got a really interesting and engaging profile. And the beauty of LinkedIn is that LinkedIn actually helps you complete your profile. So when you're setting up your LinkedIn account or just going back and revisiting your LinkedIn account, LinkedIn will tell you how much of a percentage you are to having a complete profile. And it's best to be at that 100%. So that includes filling in all of the relevant sections. LinkedIn will take you through that process. And it's not too cumbersome to do, but it is very powerful, because the more information on there, then the more people will want to engage with you. It's a fantastic place to talk to your professional network about events, webinars, all that kind of thing. And it's also really useful to showcase testimonials. And in terms of interaction, you're going to have your connections. They're going to be people that you know and you've met throughout your career. But you can also look at others as well, and you can see who is following what, and you can engage with them. And it's really easy to find like-minded people with similar interests, because LinkedIn has a range of groups that you can apply to join. In a lot of cases, you can just join. Some cases there is a manual process that means a moderator has to let you into the group, but you can apply to join pretty much any group. And once you're in that group, engaging with the group's really, really powerful, because you know there's a common interest amongst the people that are in those groups. So once again, posting really good, unique, original content is absolutely key. And that means you're going to engage better with your existing network, but it also means that potentially you're going to increase the amount of followers you have, because people who see your posts automatically on their timeline are going to be people who are just logging in if they're already connected with you, or if you've been mentioned by somebody else in your network, they will also see those posts. And you can use all sorts of tactics to do this. And for example, you could create a series of articles, and that's just one way of doing it. And again, I'm going to talk more about how we actually do that in the next session, but I know I've spoken to a couple of you about that previously to this webinar. So another thing LinkedIn is perfect for promoting is the partner status, and potentially talking about the potential income stream you can earn in addition to your own investments. So that's a really, really good topic, if you like, to communicate via LinkedIn. I've put here Go Premium. What I mean by that is that LinkedIn does offer a paid for service. It's a premium service. It is called LinkedIn Premium. I think it starts from around $29.99 a month, which initially does seem like quite a lot, quite a big investment, but actually there are lots of benefits to being able to being a LinkedIn Premium member. For example, you can send messages to pretty much any member of LinkedIn, to anyone via their sort of in-mail service, which is really useful if you're looking to target specific individuals at specific places. So I just wanted to touch on YouTube very briefly. And although you won't necessarily want to use YouTube as one of your main platforms to engage, it will certainly add to your ability to post really good content from other platforms. And it's certainly worthy of just a quick mention. So just to explain what YouTube is, it is the go-to place for video content. You'll all know that. It's got 1.9 billion monthly users. And if it was a search engine, it would be second only to Google. That's how big it is. It's popular across the entire world. And its app is incredibly popular, actually, with 70% of video views are generated from using mobile. And we're in a video age, and YouTube obviously makes use of video. And a lot of the really interesting ways in which YouTube can be used for video is for posting educational videos, which actually do quite a lot, and also vlogging. Vlogging is really, really popular. It's just basically people reading what they would ordinarily have written in a blog previously to this video age. So if you did want to use a YouTube channel to build a network, then some of the things you could consider are optimization of your videos for search engine optimization. So this means that more people are going to find your videos. So not just optimizing the video itself, but also in the information that you post with it. So, and there's loads of tips online as to how you actually do this. Ironically enough, most of the tips, the really good tips, are actually on YouTube itself. You should upload regularly if you've got a YouTube channel, and also have a fixed schedule, because your followers tend to demand regular, good, engaging and relevant content. So it might be that you say that you're going to be posting a video every 2 weeks, but when you do that, just make sure you deliver on it. Also, another tip is to organize your videos into playlists. You can do that really easily in the YouTube platform, and it just makes things much easier for your followers or viewers to find relevant content from you. You can even provide translations for your videos, but I'm yet to test that feature. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I thought it was interesting. Making connections and collaboration with others is really, really powerful. Essentially, you can get people who may well be influencers or turned influencers themselves. If you can get them to talk about and promote your videos by posting on their channel, that is really, really powerful. And again, I appreciate YouTube isn't necessarily going to be your primary focus, but it's useful to know that it's there if you need it to be. So let's just have a little talk through Twitter. Now, put simply, Twitter is a microblogging platform. So it's limited in characters. You can only post 280 characters, but this is often a really good thing. You can tweet a summary of a longer article and then link to it and take people off to find out more. But in doing that, you're actually picking out the key salient points of that article and getting people to want to find out more about you. So it's a really interesting way of almost focusing your mind on what's important when you're sharing your content. It has 326 million active monthly users, of which 81% are millennials. So it's definitely a younger audience, that's for sure. And the really interesting thing is that loads of people actually get it to get their news. And 71% of Twitter's audience uses it just for that purpose. The reason for that is it's incredibly easy to customize and personalize your unique feed. And you can do that to just show things that interest you. So you can choose the news you want to hear on a regular basis. So it makes perfect sense that that's the way people use it. You can still use video, graphics, infographics and articles, which is great. And there are absolutely loads of people on there who are talking about crypto wealth, and there are positive mentions and there are negative mentions. All I'd say on that is just have a look around. These accounts are often anonymous, again, for both positive and negative, but they can be really interesting. So a few basic tips. I'd say with Twitter, again, a mixture of pictures and video is great. Attaching media to your tweets drives traffic, it drives engagement. It just makes your posts more interesting. And build up your following. So following accounts, relevant accounts, often means that people will follow back. It's kind of an unwritten rule, actually, to a certain extent. A lot of people do just follow back because you follow them. So by following the right people, that can really improve who's following you. You can look at who and what is trending, what people are talking about, and that can also help you identify who to follow. And Twitter will also make some really relevant suggestions for you on that based on what you're posting and who you're interacting with. And there are some other tools out there that can also help you identify good people to follow. And try and again, engage with influencers, because you can talk to them. It's one of the few platforms out there, which means powerful influencers, celebrities, that kind of thing, are completely accessible. You just got to catch their eye. And if you catch their eye, there's a good chance you'll get engagement, and that can be really powerful. And once again, just like Instagram, use relevant and appropriate hashtags. You can invent your own, so you can use a unique hashtag to promote an event, for example, and encourage other people who are posting about that event to do the same. Or you can jump on a wave of trending hashtags too, or have a mixture of both. So most of the platforms that I've just given a really high level summary of there and talked about can be connected up. And the ability to do that using software and to get organized and to schedule things is actually really, really helpful. Now, we use something called Hootsuite, for example, at Daxi, which just makes things a lot simpler for us. But actually, Hootsuite doesn't work with personal Facebook accounts. But there are others out there that can do similar things like Buffer, Sprout Social, Buzzsumo, Meltwater. There's lots of them. But what they can do is these platforms, as well as organizing your content and helping you schedule, they can also help with engagement measurement. So finding out exactly what engagement has happened as a result of your social media posts. So they can monitor those and give you alerts, and they can also give you a clue as to what actually is being posted out there. We call it social listening, if you like. So to help you with certain trends that are being talked about on all the different platforms. Now, when I say content efficient here, what I mean is that you can use the same adapted content for different platforms. Just tailor it, change the hashtags, maybe add a slightly different comment. And as I've said, absolutely loads tonight, make use of the content that others put out by sharing really good, relevant content and simply adding to it. So I thought I'd finish off this little talk by just giving you a few general top tips. And these are my personal opinion, but I've always found they work for me. It's a good idea to write a plan. So it doesn't have to be war and peace, but if you want to set yourself some objectives, it's going to give you clarity as to what it is you want to achieve and why you want to achieve it. Now, your objective could be to get a certain amount of people to attend a webinar, or you get a certain amount of clicks to an educational video. And you might have different objectives for each platform, but that's absolutely fine. Moving on to content, and I can't say it enough, I banged on a lot about this, but it's crucial. Create or use informative, shareable, actionable, and relevant content. And it can be unique, but we can also help, and so can other people who are doing exactly the same thing as you. And the great news is, because you're on social media, you can actually view that at any time. So the content, I would say, though, always needs to be visual. It needs to be appealing. And the best tip here I'd give is put yourself in the position of the people who you want to look at your post, and just ask yourself the question: is that going to work? Is that going to make people ask more questions and create engagement and create conversations? The other thing I'd say is always be active and responsive to any engagement that you do have. Keep the engagement going, always respond to answer queries and that kind of thing. And if you possibly can, measure metrics like conversions and click-throughs. And all of the platforms offer a certain amount of insight within the platform itself, but tools such as Hootsuite and some of the others can also help you with this as well. And that will help you guide your strategy, because it means you can focus on the things that you feel are working well, and some of the more experimental things that perhaps don't work so well, you don't have to carry on with. And I hope that's given you a flavour for what the various social media platforms are capable of doing for your business. It's going to take some work, that's for sure. But as Sarah's already testified, it can well be worth it. And I'd just like to say that next time, in a couple of weeks' time, I am going to go into a lot more detail about how we actually do some of the things that we've talked about today. But I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour and a bit of an overview. And I hope it's been useful. And thank you very much for listening.
Great stuff,
I'm going to hand back to Catherine now. Yeah.
So look, first things first, Andy was super nervous about tonight. So if you can all just unmute yourself and give him a quick round of applause, I would really appreciate that. Good work.
Well done. Well done, Andy.
Absolutely brilliant, Andy.
Yeah, that was really good. Amazing.
Well done, mate.
Well done, mate.
So look, the reward for work is always more work. So I'm afraid you've done such a good job. We're going to have to make you come back and do it again in a few weeks' time.
Nice one, Andy.
Thank you.
So look, I just wanted to publicise 2 separate sessions. So we are going to give poor Andy a week off just to recover from the stress of this evening. So next Monday, we have got a really special session. We've had a bit of feedback that it would be great to Q&A our top 3 partners. So we've got our 3 partners on pretty much an Ask Me Anything. You can ask them any question you like, or probably write an agenda just to keep the conversation flowing. But our top partners in terms of the sales they produce, the number of clients they've managed to produce, and of course, recruiting people in their downline. So that's a really exciting session. That's 7 p.m. In a week's time. And then in 2 weeks' time, as Andy says, he'll be building on some of the themes we've talked about this evening. So I think we really see today as a bit of an introduction. There was certainly some social media channels that I don't use. I don't use Instagram. I use LinkedIn, but I don't really use it very much. So today was reintroduction. The session in a fortnight will be more sort of hints and tips on how to specifically use it and just going into a bit more detail. So it'll be an amazing session. So please do attend. I know Andy puts loads of work and love into making the sessions interesting. So please do join us. So look, if you've got any questions, because there are so many of you, would you mind just popping them in the chat so I can collate them? I'd really appreciate that. Or if it's a particularly long question, just put in a message to me that will come to you. So Andy, I did have one question whilst you were talking. It was a question from Janine about Clubhouse. I've certainly heard a few people talking about Clubhouse. I know Steph that's on, Nick that's on, do use it occasionally. Do you have any opinion on Clubhouse, whether that's a good one or what it does? I think it's invitation only, but just a few questions if you could talk a little bit about that, please. That's all right, Andy.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, it's not something I've used. I've used certainly in my career at all. So it's going to be very difficult for me to answer as to how effective I think that could be. It's just not something I've got experience in using.
I can add value if you'd like, Andy.
Yeah,
I've been looking at it a little bit. The way that we could utilize it would be for sessions such as this. Excuse me, we could host these kind of sessions on Clubhouse as well so that people can watch them live. It's similar to Facebook Live and Instagram Live, those kind of things, but via an invitation only. So it's something that can be utilized for us and something that can be utilized for you individually to invite people along to your own webinars as well. It's just a more social way instead of Zoom is considered a business tool. The Clubhouse is kind of the social version of Zoom moving forward.
More for live events. That sounds, it sounds really interesting.
And I think from my understanding in that there is a fair amount of crypto chat on there already. So look, that's why we love our partners so much. There's a bit of chat saying Michelle and Steph and Janine have all said they have invitations. It's invitation only. So you need someone that's on it already to invite you. So Janine, Steph and Michelle have very kindly made their invitations available. So much appreciated.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah.
So it is iPhone only.
Oh, is it?
Interesting. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that either. My God, look, we're not down with the youngsters, Gareth. Look at all this new technology we've missed out on. We'll be using it via carrier pigeon. I had a question, if that's all right, Andy. Sure. Look, I know that everyone's got their favourite social media channel. I love Facebook, Twitter for me. I just socially, I don't really like it. Is there any, and I know you've discussed a whole variety, is there any sort of one channel you think is more effective than the other from a DAXI perspective? If you said, look, I'm only going to do one, which one should I do, Andy? Have you got one that they should focus on, or are they all doing
do you know what? I probably wouldn't narrow it down to one, but I'd probably put it down to two. And that would be Facebook, for all the reasons that I've mentioned previously, but LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn, I think, is incredibly powerful. I think you can really show a good deal of expertise with LinkedIn. And when you're talking to people who are potentially, it's not just B2B, but these are people who are wanting to be educated as much as anything when they're looking for content on LinkedIn.
Sorry,
I think LinkedIn is...
B2B means. Sorry, I know what B2B means. Just explain what B2B means.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. So as I said in the presentation, it's traditionally thought of as business to business. So people talking about business to business people. But actually, the platform has evolved in recent years to be more than that. It's, in my opinion, and in the opinion of lots of others as well, it's best used in a social way, because essentially what we're doing is we're giving educational messages and interesting content to people who happen to be involved in business, but are joined a network to almost get educated and to learn about other things that they might be interested in. So I think LinkedIn is incredibly powerful. And if I had to choose one and you had to push me to one, I think LinkedIn personally is probably the one with the most potential out there.
Very good. Okay, wonderful. Do you know whose other brain I would love to pick, because he's currently using a couple? Have we still got Dave McCall, Lovey? Would you mind unmuting yourself? Dave, I know you're using a couple of different channels. Would you mind just, I'm not in any way disagreeing with what Andy says, but have you got a bit of a comparison about how you found the various ones? Is that okay, Lovey? Thanks for your...
Yeah, of course. I basically use a lot. I use Reddit. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, I'm on it. Other than things like Grindr and those dodgy ones, but all the decent ones I'm on. I'm going to slightly disagree with Andy, because Twitter, you can get to anybody, and I'm going to back that up with this. My youngest son is 23. He has a Facebook account that he never uses, and he's always on Twitter. He doesn't have a Twitter account. The reason I mention that is he can find out anything newsworthy that he likes, and his go-to is Twitter. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I'm going to add to that the likes of these big boys that are really, really pushing the Bitcoin and all the other things that's going on in our lovely world at the moment. Elon Musk, he tweets 30, 40 times a day. I follow him. Michael Saylor, MicroStrategies, he does exactly the same thing. All the news posts that I find that I put on our platform, I don't do so much now because I'm too busy at the moment. I find them, believe it or not, from Twitter. It is way, way, way ahead of the curve when it comes to news and stuff like that. But does it help you engage with clients? Maybe. I think there's a bit of trial and error with everything, but I found, and I'm going to contradict everything that I've just said, that my success has kind of been down to LinkedIn. A lot of my clients, and my background is B2B, so I've dealt with bosses of big firms, government officials and all that sort of nonsense in my 30 odd years experience of doing whatever. And I found that LinkedIn is my go-to to engage. Syra, on the other hand, may be different. She might look at things like Facebook because she's of that generation. And I don't mean that to be a rude remark. It's actually on the opposite side. But I think what I'm getting at is one of you will find the platform that you'll love, and it will suit what you want to do.
That's it. I
hope I've summed that up in my roundabout bullshit.
I would totally agree with that, actually, David. That's one of the points I was trying to get across, is that there's a social media platform out there for our target demographic, and it might be a different one for each individual person, but there is one out there, and there's a target audience out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, really good point.
Brilliant. Okay, guys, so I'm very conscious that Paul Gareth needs this Zoom suite to run his crypto for beginners in a couple of minutes. So if I've got any more questions, please do pop them in the chat, or else we will be hogging Paul Gareth's space. I've got a night off tonight, bit of Andy, bit of Gareth. Result, apart from my 9 p.m. call, I'm doing well. So look, it's been an amazing session. Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you. I
really appreciate everyone coming along. Thank you.
So look, reach out to Andy on LinkedIn if you've got any specific questions via Gareth or I. So thanks for joining us.